I'm not that smart, not that athletic. I'm not like that like savvy with finance. Like I'm not that good at that like anything except for music, and I'm not even that good at music.
I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
On today's episode, I'm joined by singer-songwriter Slimdan.
I started thinking about the fact that I was privileged enough to be making a living doing music, and that can go away at any point. And if I look back on my career and I was just afraid the whole time, like that would be such a big bummer.
We dive into the process of songwriting, the contrast between writing for other artists versus writing for yourself, and the unexpected experience of a shady Uber ride turned a drug deal that pushed him to chase his dreams and go all in.
Once I changed my mindset to this is all a science experiment, like it got way better for me.
Welcome to Create.Repeat.
Voices in my head telling me it's now or never. Just turned 31, I can't deny the pressure. Even at my best, I know that I can do better. Running out of time, but how the hell can you measure your life? Lately,
Cool. Slimdan, welcome to the show.
Hey, bud.
Dude, how's it going?
Happy to be alive.
Dude, I'm happy that you're alive. I'm happy that you're here today. I'm a huge fan of your music. Like, I really, really vibe with Second Dinner, your new album. And I actually found you on TikTok earlier this year, probably around January. And I saw a TikTok of you with like 60 likes on it. And it was you singing your song Be Somebody in a grocery store.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. No, that was like, that's when I first started like trying on TikTok.
Dude, I don't know what it was. It was just maybe the algorithm gods that day, but I sat there and I watched it, and maybe it was you were wearing these like retro Vancouver Grizzlies shorts that just caught my eye. I'm like, who's this dude like, singing about this? But that like immediately made me go and search your music, and I listened to that song again, Be Somebody, and I don't know what it was. Maybe I was just in this weird headspace. Like I said, it's beginning of the year, ready to like new year, new me, and that song made me cry. Just like hearing about this idea of you kind of confronting like a younger past self of yourself and almost letting them down, I guess. Of, I have the lyrics here where you go, I keep making these collect calls, my past life. He wanted to know what would become of the prophet, the dreamer. He really thought I would be somebody. I could hear it in his voice. He was hoping I would be somebody. Never thought I'd turn into no one. What's that come from?
Whoa. Yeah. I haven't heard it like spat at me like a cappella before.
I was really fighting back not singing it to you.
Oh my God. I felt like I was in 8 Mile, like a rap battle or something.
B-Rabbit.
Thank you for listening to that. That comes from like a very specific place, actually. It's so I mean, I guess like a little backstory is that I come not from the artist world necessarily, but more so in music from the songwriting world and production world. And that's its own whole story of how I got into that. But I had initially sort of started, that was my foot into the industry, was writing and producing. And always in the back of my head, I think I was like, but will I ever like put my own stuff out? And I was just so afraid of putting my own stuff out. And that was like a big theme in my life, was like fear-based decisions. I was like exclusively making fear-based decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that was me. That song is about me sort of like realizing that like I kind of like wimped out a little bit, and I kind of took the easy path, and like, what would my younger self think of that? And I think this whole like Slimdan project has been like a big kind of, it's not a redemption story, but it's more so like me trying to do the opposite and only making fear-based decisions and like trying to lean into that feeling.
Dude, I love that. It's such a universal concept for anyone that is in the creative field. I think especially like in today's social media society where you have to like really put yourself out there, and you're putting out a TikTok that's getting 60 likes or whatever. And I think you can see that as like oh man, this flopped. But then you weirdly are finding this audience of people that are really resonating, like me, who I saw that, but it turned me on to all of your music. And dude, I just love you as a singer-songwriter. I think your writing style is so it's so vulnerable. Like I feel like I know you in a sense, at least the parts that you're trying to show us, that it really connects, and so much of your songs has this specificity to it that weirdly makes it relatable. I think about that like with your one song, Magazines, right? Like that is and that's like from an old kind of EP that you did. And hearing that song, I've never gone through a situation like that, but I weirdly felt that I was in that situation with you. And I don't know, man, like it really, really connects with me. So maybe I'm just
Thank
kind of
you.
buttering you up of just saying you make
Keep
great
on
stuff.
buttering, my man.
Yeah, I got plenty of butter
Yeah.
coming in. It is, you know,
Lather
I
that
can't
shit
believe it's not butter,
on.
but I'm going to do
I
that.
can't believe it's not butter.
Yeah, but so okay, so when you're talking about like I'm really curious about how you did get into music.
Sure.
Was music always the thing growing up, or
Yeah. I'm not that smart. I'm not that athletic. I'm not like that like savvy with finance. Like I'm not that good at that like anything except for music, and I'm not even that good at music. And I think for a second growing up, like I was kind of floating a little bit. And my dad is like, his superpower as a parent was like identifying his kids like passions and like investing full like his time into that and showing us how to be passionate about things.
wow?
So once I think he saw that I had a little bit of a natural interest in music, he was like, go. He was so supportive of me, and he like would send me to like music summer camps and stuff like that in high school. So I think that it wasn't always the thing, but once I found it, I was like, this is the only thing. So I guess this is what I'm going to do. I would have
Yeah.
been like a complete scumbag probably without music, because I was completely just aimless and I had no clue what was happening. But I would say like at around 13, I started maybe like kind of taking music a bit seriously, and I was busking on the street in LA at the Barnes and Noble on Ventura.
Been there. It's a great one.
It's a great one. And the trick there was all the rich moms would take their kids into the bookstore,
Yeah.
and they would come out, and then the kids would be like, "Mommy, music." And they would be in such a rush to get out that like they would have to give me money just to get their kid to stop.
Smart.
And I would make bank.
Really?
So that was like my first performing experience probably. Yeah.
Wow. You're like, oh, I can really do this. I'm a professional.
I'm a
musician
professional.
At 13.
I just made $200. Tom Morello gave me $5 one time.
Wow.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just really changed it for you. So like, did you go to school for music?
So high school, no, I went to like a small Jewish private school. Like my
Cool.
family's like really Jewish.
Oh, really?
Like Orthodox. Like
Oh, wow.
that vibe.
Cool.
So very much a not go, like there was no music program or anything like that. I was
Yeah.
kind of just like YouTube had just happened. So I was like
Yeah.
kind of getting all the information from there. And then I went to this place called Berklee College of Music in Boston. And that's where I really got like, that's when I really learned I wasn't that good at music.
You're just like, oh, I'm in the big leagues now. And
Oh
everyone here's
my
amazing.
gosh. Yeah. It was very much so like a big fish, small pond
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then going in there, like, I don't think I left my room for a full year because I was so scared of everybody. But yeah, so then I studied songwriting, whatever that means,
Yeah.
at Berklee, and I learned some stuff.
Nice. And so that then got you into, writing songs. Cause I know, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking like you've worked with like Carly Rae Jepsen and Diplo and
Yeah.
those kinds of artists. Like how does that happen?
It's interesting. It's like, so in college, I was in an indie band, and I was very much so subscribed to like I'm going to move to LA, work at like a hipster coffee shop,
Yeah.
and like be one of those guys
Yeah,
and
do the
just
thing.
do the thing, be in a band, tour shitty small venues and love it. Because
Yeah.
I love doing that. But have you ever heard of this artist named Sasha Sloan?
I'm not familiar.
She's awesome. She's like one of my best friends in the whole world. But what happened was I moved to LA, and she had been in LA writing songs. And we ended up writing a song together that she ended up putting out for her artist project that did like pretty well.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like, I'd imagine in your universe, there's like the product, but then there's like the machine that makes the product.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really too hip to that. But through writing that song with her, I kind of got thrust into this like writing, producing world, because they were like, oh, you're the pop guy. You wrote the pop song.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I ended up getting into rooms. And then I also had a lot of friends from school and growing up who were already in there. So they kind of brought me in as well.
Yeah. So what's that like cause like going back to your music, it is so specific to you.
Yeah.
What is it like writing for other people? Is it easier? Is it harder?
I think writing for me was a skill. Like I just learned how to do that like 2 years ago.
Wow. That's
I feel like I'm
crazy.
still learning how to do that. To be honest, every day I'm learning how to
Well,
do
you're a
that.
natural in my book. Yeah.
That means a lot, because it's like, I think the beauty of writing for other people is you can be somebody else that day. It's like
Sure.
I literally, so what I do, I still do it all the time. I love writing with artists are my favorite. I love working with artists. So like literally yesterday I was with this guy, Jeremy Zucker, and I like go to his house and I'm like, today I'm just going to do whatever Jeremy Zucker needs me to do. And I'm going to channel whatever he wants. And I get to be that for the day.
Right.
Which is pretty sick to be Jeremy Zucker
Yeah.
for the day. Like
Could be worse, right?
Could be way worse. But I think that like that mentality and sort of being like a helper and helping somebody actualize their vision, it's like, it's really satisfying to me.
Yeah.
So that's that kind of writing. And then when I'm writing for myself, at least, it's like very much so me asking like the heavy hitting questions of like, would I say that? What do I want to say?
Yeah.
That's like the most important thing. And I think for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't even think I should try writing for myself. I think let's just focus on other people and learn as much as you can about how to be an artist and being authentic and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then once I felt ready, I started writing for myself.
I imagine it's sort of similar when like you have a friend that's got a problem and they don't know what to do with it. And it's so easy for you to like be like, oh, this is simple. You're just in your head about this. But then when you have your own problem, you have to like, it's the hardest thing in the world.
Very much so.
It's easy to diagnose someone else's thing, but like when you have your own stuff.
It's like somebody's dating like a really like terrible person and you're like, you obviously should break up. And it's so clear, but they're like so in it. Yeah, it's exactly that.
Right.
Yeah. Except you're in like a music studio.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like finish a verse. That's like the only difference basically. But yeah.
So what was that moment that made you step out and start this Slimdan project?
I think it was a lot. It was, if I had to pinpoint it, I was in Colorado on a writing camp. And I was on a walk with my friend Sarah, and I think we were talking about something, and then the idea of like, she just asked me why I wasn't doing something, and I said, because I'm afraid, and she said, why are you afraid? And then it made me start thinking about this whole thing, like why am I afraid of doing X?
Yeah.
And then I couldn't come up with like a good enough answer. You ever do that? Like you can't, I couldn't like, not even like, I wasn't even trying to answer her. I was trying to answer to myself, and I couldn't even answer that to myself. And then I just kind of like did a little audit on my life, and I was like, man, you're really scared and you're making decisions completely based out of like fear.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about the fact that I was privileged enough to be making a living doing music, and that can go away at any point. And if I look back on my career and I was just afraid the whole time, like that would be such a big bummer.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing the thing that I love. I'm so lucky. Like, why not do what you want to do? So once I had that kind of switch in mentality, I fired my whole entire team. Literally, I got back, fired my whole team, and then was like, let's start putting out music. And then that's been its own journey in itself, and like figuring out what feels good and how to that. There's a lot of fear in that too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So yeah, that's sort of how I got started.
Yeah, especially, I mean, all of a sudden being the front man of your own stuff, like it's hard to, be creative and analytical at the same time. I think it's so much easier when you're like, take a step back and do that. So I imagine in that spot. So were you just sort of putting out singles and then an EP? How did that come about?
There was no game plan. In the beginning being like 2022-ish.
Yeah.
I had just started writing songs that I knew like BB Rexa wouldn't want, like very specific song. Like I had wrote this song called MVP, and I was like, nobody really wants to sing about that but me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a bad thing at first. But then I realized that was actually probably my superpower later down the line, was that I can only sing about the stuff I want to sing about, and nobody else wants to sing it except for me, and that makes me my own thing. But I started writing songs that felt like me a bit, and I started putting out singles, and then I signed to this cool label in the UK called Communion, and they were nice enough to put out my first record in the pandemic. And I thought like, I guess like the main thing for me was like, there was like I wasn't trying era, and then there were I was trying era.
Yeah.
And in the beginning I thought like it was really not cool to try because of the people I was surrounded by, and a little bit of like what I thought being an artist was, because I had no clue. And I was like, yeah, I'll just like put it out and like everyone will hear it and it'll be amazing. And obviously I put it out and 60 views or whatever. And like it wasn't really happening, and that was okay. It was just me putting out music.
Yeah.
And then about a year ago, I had the revelation that trying is actually like the coolest thing you can do. And it takes way more guts to try than to not try. And I was like, as long as it's sincere and authentic, what are people going to say to you? I think it was that fear of being judged by people being like, look how hard he's trying.
Yeah.
And so like, I would say a year ago is really when I like or a year and a half ago, I started like leaning into the Slimdan thing a bit more.
I'm sure like also like as you're kind of building a career in this songwriting, you know, producing side of things, there's got to be some insecurities there as well there too, where it's like, it's kind of easy sometimes to be in the back seat or I was about to make a terrible pun about your own music. I was like, or being in the nosebleeds. That's one of the songs.
Yeah.
You should listen to it. It's great. But yeah, I actually do kind of like have a question about nosebleeds. Is that sort of like a similar theme for you? Because I do think like with this Second Dinner project, like you do have that kind of feeling of that like my life is this one way and I need to make it. I have to get to this next place and like being in the nosebleeds, being at the game, but not being in the game.
Yeah.
Is that sort of like where that song came from? I'm curious.
It's more of like, it's a sentiment, I would say. And that's definitely a part of it. It's like the idea of like, not fully participating in your own life, which has like been a constant theme for me, kind of because I can kind of drift off a little bit, and being present has been something that I'm working at and sort of feeling included, which is like I have such good friends. I'm so lucky. I have such a good support system, but even just like people, I sometimes can isolate myself a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like feeling like an outsider, and I think definitely being behind the scenes while the other artists are kind of putting songs out and doing the thing, and me feeling like, hey, why can't I do it? But also just in life, I think especially I'm from LA, but like being involved in LA culture, it's like very easy to feel like an outsider because it's what it's built on is like the cool kids and the not cool kids.
Yeah.
And everybody secretly thinks they're the not cool kid. So it's like this whole mind fuck. And I think it was just me like reflecting on that a bit.
You are from LA. I feel like sometimes, you know, I've been in LA for 10 years. It is kind of rare that you meet like a true person from here because it's such a transplant city at time. And anytime I do meet that, but I feel like listening to your music, there's a little bit there. I pick up a little Beach Boys sometimes, like with your music. Like what are some of your other influences?
Thank you for the Beach Boy shout. I mean, one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
I feel like the Beatles, Beach Boys, but have you ever heard of this group called Say Anything?
Oh, dude, I was gonna bring up Say Anything.
Yeah.
Because I definitely picked up on that.
So Max Bemis is like one of my favorite songwriters. Kid Cudi, I would say, is also a huge person for me. Paul Simon. It really, I was lucky where I think we all grew up, like our generation, where it's like music was just so available.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like on streaming yet. It was all through MTV music videos. Do you remember like TRL and all that shit?
Oh yeah.
So like
Carson Daly.
I grew up really religious. So like my TV time was sort of like my escapism into like the real world.
Yeah.
And like I got equal doses of like Black Eyed Peas and like Counting Crows, and it was this cool little mashup of stuff. So I felt very fortunate that I got to like have a wide music taste.
Yeah, that was like the best part of you know, we're similar ages of growing up in that like iTunes LimeWire era.
Sure.
That where you did all of a sudden have access to,
God.
songs, and that you could do. It wasn't just like your older brother gave you a crate of his CDs. Like you really could go and discover your own music.
Yeah. So
Black Eyed Peas, man. Like we're gonna look back on them and just feel like they really changed music.
So this is really nerdy, but like 2 years ago, me and my wife were sitting there and I spent like an hour on my phone. She's like, what are you doing? And I'd like graphed out like every single hit will.i.am has had like from like 2010 to 2020.
Yeah.
Do you know he did American Boy for Kanye?
No. That's an incredible song.
Right. Like there's so many records that he's behind that people don't even know, but also the amount of smashes the Black Eyed Peas have.
Yeah.
Like they basically run like the bar mitzvah and wedding like market at this point.
Yeah. I feel like they had like their fall off was when they did the Super Bowl and they couldn't like
the second they got all robot-y, I kind of lost
tough.
them.
They were really pushing auto-tune and kind of like having like metal helmets and stuff. It was cool. They were 3000 and what was it, 8? So 2000 and late.
There it is.
I was at the game where Fergie did the national anthem.
No.
And so luckily I got to be there like with the team, and I was like doing behind the scenes content. And I remember hearing her rehearse and being like, is this real? Is she just kind of messing around? And wasn't sure, but yeah, that's like
saw that happen?
Yeah.
What team were you with?
I was with the Sacramento Kings. So I was like, they took me down to the All-Star game. It was right here at Crypto Staples, I think, back then.
Yeah.
And I had an all access pass and I just got to go around. And
You
it
work
was
for the
so
Kings?
for like a very short time, like back and forth.
So I'm like a diehard, like you'll probably edit this out because
Yeah.
nobody gives a shit, but like
Yeah.
I'm a diehard Lakers fan, and I came up in like the Lakers Kings
oh
thing,
man, we could talk for hours.
like Vlade Divac,
yeah,
Doug
Mike
Christie,
Bibby, Chris Webber, yeah,
who was that dude? Fuck.
Bobby Jackson.
Bobby
Yeah.
Jackson was nice.
Yeah.
That guy was a killer. Yeah. But literally, like, I remember the Robert Ory shot
Dude.
versus the Spurs. I mean, that was the Spurs, but that whole era, like, I was at all those parades every
Yeah.
year they won. So I'm sorry.
I was just praying for a parade. I hated. I got into a fight with a kid wearing a Shaq jersey at school
That's
during
so
that time, and like
freaking
it was
awesome.
real because Sacramento, there isn't anything else. It was just the Kings, and
Yeah.
so and it's kind of like we're going up against LA and had that. But I loved those rivalries, and obviously I had such a respect for Kobe, but it was like I hate Kobe for
Even I hated Kobe,
yeah.
and I was a Lakers fan.
Yeah, and you're
he's
just like,
hateable.
I hate
Yeah.
this, and then obviously now there's a different respect there where I'm like, man, I miss hating Kobe.
That's so cool that you work for the Kings.
yeah,
I'm very
but
impressed.
that was like a crazy moment of just like, okay, I get to just walk around by myself and walking past Shaq and all these people and getting to go on the court. It was nuts.
That's awesome.
yeah, definitely a highlight for me. It just
Love
turns
that for-
into me just talking about like, yeah,
I
so-
love that for you. For
yeah.
real.
But yeah, you're a sports fan, huh? You're a big like Dodgers guy too.
Yeah.
Also, like you incorporate like sports into your music, like you're saying MVP and I guess nosebleeds too. Like
Yeah.
maybe I connect with that too because you're saying like all your influences. I'm like, oh yeah, I like all that music, and
I think what it is like I was like a sensitive dude that grew up around fratty guys.
yeah,
So like the symptom of growing up that way is like you like Elliott Smith, but you also like if there's a sports game on at a restaurant, like your eyes just naturally
Yeah.
like, you have to pay attention.
yeah,
So I kind of have like equal sides, I would say.
yeah,
And I don't know. It's just always been a big part of who I am, and I feel like leaning into what you are is probably the only way I know how to do like the artist thing. So
Yeah.
it just ends up in there.
So okay, so your album Second Dinner.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about this as someone like I don't do music or anything, but making a full length album. My first question is, how do you know when you're done?
That's a good question. So I think, it would be really cool for me to come here and say like, I sat down and was like, I'm going to make an album and
Yeah.
started writing songs, but it really didn't happen like that for me. I think that going back to the fear thing, I had been writing in the past year and a half, I've been writing these songs and putting them out as singles, and they started gaining some traction. And then my producer, Ryan, and a couple of my other producers were like, I was going to put it out as an EP. And they were like, why don't you do an album? And I was like, that's like way too serious. Like, I'm terrified of that.
Yeah.
They're like, why? And I couldn't really get a real answer out of myself. So I just decided with their help, I was like, fuck it, let's just do an album and put out the songs that I put out and then a couple new ones. So I think for me, for the closure, I was looking for like one or two, maybe three more that I ended up writing.
Yeah,
And it's more so just like, it's less about like when is the album done, and it's more like when do we have those three songs.
yeah,
And that's a whole process of like writing, loving it, hating it,
yeah.
loving it again, working on it again,
Yeah.
putting it away. So it's like that was the bulk of my time was spent just writing and trying to get those songs right.
Yeah, and that like creative process of like this song's trash, and then all of a sudden you come back like, wait, it's actually not so bad, or
Like
of
me
that.
showing it to my wife and like she's like, I like it, but like that's not the answer. Like I wanted her to like tell me she liked it more, and like
Yeah.
I'm like, so you hate it? She's like, I just said I like it, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm so confused.
I get that.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
How many songs like did you record? How many didn't make the cut? I guess when you were
That's
searching for those three songs.
Probably like 6 or 7 didn't
Yeah.
make the cut. Not even because like they were bad songs, but like more so because I felt like I had landed on this tone that had just
Yeah.
naturally developed, and I was like, I kind of wanted to keep it. Some songs were too serious, and not to
Okay.
say that I'm not being serious in my music, because
Yeah.
I'm being dead ass, but I'm also fucking around to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So like there were certain songs that felt like they were maybe not in like taking themselves a little too seriously for this project. So
Sure.
maybe save them for later. Kind
Yeah,
of
that's great. Have you thought about that? Like that feeling of putting something out and then going like, well, if this does well, I have to do it again. I know there's like the trope of like the sophomore slump album.
I'm trying not to think about stuff like
Yeah.
that, because
I'm just like inserting a fear into your.
no, it's like I've I've like light topically thought about it, like just kind of skimmed it. It's not worth it to worry about that shit. I think also like a lot of artists start worrying about like, now I got to change everything up.
Sure.
I don't know, man. I'm just trying to write songs that like I like. I think that's the thing too. It's like I'm just trying to write songs that I want to listen to.
Yeah.
And if people want to listen to that too, that's awesome. And if people relate to that, that's even freaking better. Cause like I'm also looking to connect with other people.
Yeah.
And that's the best feeling. So I'm trying not to overthink the whole like next wave of things and be present.
Yeah. So going back to like how I discovered you on TikTok, I feel like now with TikTok specifically, with these other social platforms, it's become the new radio, and it really has to be like this artist first approach of you pushing your stuff.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with that? Because I do, like, as someone who follows you, I do see like you have to put out all these things, and you're very creative in how you do it. Sometimes it's like your humor of like, I got super stoned and I wrote this album, and you just like look completely baked. And there's other times where you're being more creative in the sense of like being in a grocery store, or we'll get to this, but like you just released the whole live music video / like concert, like in your mom's like office that she works in. And that's so dope. But like, what's your relationship with that, of like being weirdly a content creator as well?
Yeah. I think that like, at first it was really stressful and really, really, really kind of like it felt icky.
Yeah.
And it was intimidating, and I was very much so looking at what other people were doing and crushing with and being like, does that mean I have to do that?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are asking themselves that question. And once I changed my mindset to this is all a science experiment, like it got way better for me, because I was like, rather than like having expectations for things, I just like, what would happen if I did this? I just started being a little bit more curious.
Yeah.
And once I had that mental switch, like the whole social media thing became a lot stupider, and I realized how dumb it is, but also a lot less serious.
Yeah.
And I think that like if it's being perceived as calculated or like thought through, like, homie, I'm just like taking a selfie, putting an audio behind it, and putting my song, and like maybe my lack of effort is like what's translating. But that mixed in with like obviously like a little bit more thought out concepts. Hopefully you land somewhere in the middle where it's like he cares, but like it's not that serious.
Yeah. I think that is something that's so interesting about today's day and age, because it is a separate skill of having to make content and like just knowing like other, music acts and stuff. Like you can be an amazing songwriter, but do you feel like you have to play the social game in order to, I guess, make it?
100%.
Yeah.
It's funny. I work with artists every single day. That's like my favorite thing in the world to do, is like just learn about somebody else.
Yeah.
See how they're doing their thing. See what they're passionate about. What's their strategy? What are they afraid of? Like, that's my favorite thing. But I have this new kind of like, almost like level of consciousness now, like when I'm interacting with an artist or like evaluating if I want to work with an artist, where I'm like, how hard are they trying on social media? And if they're not trying as hard as I'm trying, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
Because I know what it's like. I know what it means. I'm not even trying that hard, but I know what the bare minimum is.
Yeah.
And I think it is 100% a skill. And it's less of like a skill of like, are you good at social media? And more of like what is your work ethic like? And how seriously or how badly do you want this thing?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's people say it's unfortunate. I'm not going to argue whether it is what it is. It's the landscape that we're in. And I think that like, I used to complain about it. I sometimes still complain about it, but I think overall where I've landed is like, it is what it is. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. It's like, it's just a sign of the times, people used to have to go play malls for 10 people and go to, Minnesota, and shout out Minnesota. But like have to do that. I feel like that's kind of like the struggle of like on the come up. You have to do these things that you might not have to.
Right. But like also like, I don't know about you, but I found that like when there are restrictions of like, this is not the only way, but this is the primary way of how you're going to do it, that can free you up sometimes. Because if you have to do something, you have to get creative of how you're going to do it and what makes it you. And I think if it was like, you can go on. If there were like 500 million different options of ways to go about being an artist, I would be paralyzed. I wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
At least I know I have to do something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How's that like in your songwriting? Like, cause I totally agree with that sentiment. A thing I like to say, and sorry for listeners if you are like, he's saying this again, but I always like to say for creatives, it's fun to build a fence around the playground, you know, put these parameters in there and then you can do whatever you want inside those playground. But like, if you just give someone open space, you can go any way, and then that is paralyzing. But
100%.
with songwriting, like, when you go into a session, are you going in with kind of like an idea of what you want to talk about? And I mean, specifically for you, not necessarily like when you work with other artists.
Sure.
But like, what is that process for you?
So it's different, but first off, I want to say the playground thing, like I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very young perspective to be like fuck the rules, fuck all that. And I agree, fuck the rules, like sure. But like also like boxing yourself in, it forces you, like putting yourself in a corner forces you to be more creative.
Yeah.
And forces you to make way quicker decisions. And like there's something to be said for that. And if you can get good when you're uncomfortable, then you're unbeatable.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a comedian like forcing themselves to go up on stage with no material.
Yeah.
Like I really subscribe to that of like make yourself uncomfortable and you will get more interesting results. Back to my process, I would say it's I have like in the notes app, like I'm like constantly just writing down whether it be like phrases,
like
titles,
motorcycle.
but like I wrote Foreverish down and then we landed on Motorcycle later, but it's usually just me writing down, like I just have a rule of like write down no matter how stupid it is, no matter how smart or pretentious, just write it down. And then I'll usually go in the studio with my amazing co-writers and producers, and they'll start playing a musical idea, or I will start playing a musical idea. And then once that's playing, I'll kind of flip through my notes app and be like, oh, this kind of matches that. And then try to write from that perspective. I'm not good at like kind of feeling my way through like music and like just like off the dome going like that.
Yeah,
I like
not like Jay-Z who's just like, all right, let's go.
Right. No, I very much. No, my process is very much so like torturous and like, let's beat it. Yeah. I'm a thinker.
I'm just always so curious while listening to it, because your music does just come off as like, maybe this is just a credit to your songwriting, but it comes off effortless. Like there's sometimes there'll be words that go in a place where it's satisfying. It perfectly clicks. And I am always curious about like, okay, how was that like days in the studio of you just like being a miserable person and then finally you found something?
What's cool is like, and I would say this, like find people that work the same way you work.
Yeah.
And like, there's this like, I wouldn't say like there's misery in the studio. I would say there's like a level of like, I treat the music studio when I'm writing for myself, and I don't mean this as like pretentious way. Like that is like a holy space to me. That is like a sanctuary. That is like, this is like, we're here to do work right now. And like, it's cool. Like I see videos of like Tommy Richmond with his boys, like getting fucked up while making music. I wish I could have fun like that when I'm making music, but I'm very much so. Everybody, when we walk in that studio, it's like, we're having fun. Like, I mean, I am high, I guess, technically, but like, it's very much so like, we are here to like write the best song we can write today. Yeah. Every single day, I want to write the best song I can possibly write. And I have these like this very small crew of people that I trust, where it's like we all kind of sign this nonverbal agreement where it's like when we're here, we're not just like kind of floating ideas and being like, fuck it, haha. It's like, no, we're here to write the best song we can write.
Yeah.
So it's less like misery and more like everybody is kind of tapped in and like, we're going to keep going until it's right.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, thank you for saying it comes off as effortless, because like I'm trying so hard.
Well, it works, man.
Yeah.
You get those shots up in the gym and, you know, the fun during the game.
Oh, my God, thank you.
So you have like your collaborators, like do you tend to work with like for your own stuff, like with the same group of people, or do you like to mix different people in?
Very much so the same people.
Yeah.
I'll shout them out. There's a writer named Brian Brundage.
Okay.
Who's like kind of this like quiet assassin type guy. Like he wrote A-OK for Ty Verdes. Like he's written some huge songs. And he's kind of this like quiet dude from New Jersey who just like he's just got the sauce. Like he got it. And he brings out really like more of like the thinky side of my songwriting. I feel like songs like Foreverish and Wiener Schnitzel and Caesar Salad are all very like high concept, and that's like I write those with him. And then there's this guy Ryan Linville who's kind of like my partner in this whole thing, and he just produced like the last Olivia Rodrigo record and like the
Nice.
Chaperone stuff. So he's kind of like my partner in this, and we write a lot of the stuff together. And then there's this guy Noah Conrad who also does a lot of Chaperone stuff and Ash, and he just did the last Role Model record. So it's like what's cool is that like I'm in this space where it's like a lot of my best friends are like making like really relevant records.
Yeah.
Like they're at the top of their craft. And I'm just lucky that I get to be friends with them and be around them and work with them on other artist stuff. But they also get what I'm doing and they're willing to invest in what I'm doing because they have made zero money on what I've done. But
Soon.
Yeah, soon. But I'm really lucky to work with the people I work with. And then here and there, I'll sprinkle somebody in. But like, I think that I'm trying to like keep my perspective as pure as possible and really only work with people who understand me, not on like a musical level, but on like a friend. Like they get, when I talk about Wiener Schnitzel, like they know where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Versus like me having to explain. And I don't know, it's easier for me to like talk about with them maybe a little bit.
I mean, that really comes through that you guys are friends and you kind of have that support. I get that. I mean, these people are friends that we're doing this with. Hey guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it helps. Do you think like do you see like a difference like when you are collaborating with friends versus when you're collaborating just strictly for business?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. And not only do I see a difference in them, I see a difference in me. And that's ultimately like the craziest part is like, you try to bring yourself the same way into every situation you go into. And like, that is something I'm working on so hard, but like, it's hard to be the same way when you're with a real, like somebody you don't know, like a stranger basically, or somebody that you're like really intimidated by, or somebody that you respect the hell out. It's like, I'd imagine if like you met like Chris Webber when you were a kid, like you're coming in with whatever you think he is and whatever you think he wants you to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, it takes a couple days or a couple hours to like kind of knock that out of your system and just come back down and be like yourself.
Right.
So sometimes when I'm with other artists or other writers, I feel like I'm maybe a little bit more reserved or a little bit catering to what they want me to be, but that's also my job in that scenario. So it's kind of a mindfuck because I'm literally just there to cater to them and help them get the record that they want.
Yeah. What was that transition like for you as, you know, growing up, you're playing music, you love it. It's the passion, right? You're a soul skater.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it turns into your job where you're not going to make rent if you aren't doing this job. Like, how do you deal with that? Cause I know sometimes like creativity, like you can get burnt out. You can be stuck. Sometimes it's just not there. Like, what do you do? How do you work with that?
I drove Uber for a long time.
Yeah.
That was one thing because I wasn't paying rent and I lived in my parents' back house for a long time. And I think that like I was lucky that my transition from it being a passion into like me paying the bills, like the padding I had was I'm from LA. So my parents lived here. So I could kind of like be in their back house. So I wasn't like bawling by any means.
Yeah.
But like there was always a bowl of cereal waiting for me when I got home. And that's just
sometimes that's all it is. Yeah.
That's just I was lucky that I just happened to be from LA. I think that like when I quit my Uber, I remember the day I drove an Uber driver in Van Nuys and he put like a vague location in and we went down a street and then another car came. And then he said, stop here. He put down his window. The other guy put down his window. They did a drug deal. And then he said, keep driving. And then I drove and he said, you didn't see anything, right? And I was like, yeah, man, I didn't see shit. And that was the last Uber ride I ever did.
Yeah.
And that was when I closed the book on it. I said, okay, next time for me to do next. And then literally I signed my publishing deal probably like 2 months later. So it's like I was lucky. And once that happened, I think that like, the overwhelming feeling was gratitude and how I'm so lucky because everybody wants to do music for a living.
Yeah.
And I think you can you can get lost in the fear of it and get lost in the, when's it going to go away? Am I ever going to write a song again? I mean, I'd imagine when you have creative ideas, you have a great idea, it works, you're so proud of it. And then there's that little like, but will I ever have an idea ever again?
Oh yeah.
And it's like acknowledging that feeling and being like, hey buddy, you exist. That's cool. And then letting it pass and just trying to be as present as possible.
Yeah. What do you do for yourself when you are kind of feeling in that zone of like, I'm never going to have another idea again? Is there any like kind of like ritual you have or like thing?
I wish. I mean, it's like, I wish it was more like organized, and I wish it was like for 2 weeks I'll feel this way and then I don't.
Yeah.
But it's like on Monday I wrote an okay song with an artist and I was like, I'm all right. And then Tuesday I flopped. I couldn't write a song and I was like, I don't think I'll ever write a song again. And then yesterday I wrote a good song. I was like, I'm the best songwriter in the world. So it's like, it's like you just got to show up and you got to just do the thing. And I think that's like what I've learned is that maybe it sounds a little bit like boring to call this like a day job, but it is a day job. And like part of your day job is you got to clock in and clock out. And that's all you can ask of yourself. And whatever else happens is a little bit out of your control.
Yeah, man. I want to talk about like because you have the live version of the album coming out, right? Mm-hmm. It might be out by the time this is.
It's coming out tonight. Yeah.
Okay. So it will be.
It will be out.
We're not live streaming.
You're not putting this out right after?
Not this second. We're gonna give it a little bit of a breather, but it'll be out soon. So please,
hell yeah,
please listen to that. But yeah, so you did this whole thing in your mom's office.
Yeah.
And you and your band, you're all wearing scrubs and you do everything live. And like I said earlier, it's sort of exactly like how I discovered you doing it live, but it's a mixture between live and a music video. Can you walk me through that process? Like,
sure.
Where does that come from? Do you like doing that more? Is there a benefit to that? Why your mom's office?
For sure. So I think where it comes from is like, so I have an awesome label that I'm putting this album out through called Harbor. And they are like, they're so involved with me on not the music end, but the pushing out of the music. So it came from me brainstorming with one of the producers there. Her name's Mimi. And I think in their head, they were like, we should do music videos. And there's nothing I hate more than music videos for me personally. I think that like some people like that's their bag and that's like where they get all their ideas out. For me, I'm like, this is a waste of time and money. Like nobody really cares unless you're doing something like the bar I've set for music videos is the OK Go.
Like the treadmill.
The treadmill video. That's the greatest music video of all time. It costs zero money. That's just like using your brain. And unless I have an idea that's that good, I probably don't want to make a music video, but I also need content at the same time. And I think that live videos just translate better on social media than music videos.
Yeah.
Because you get to see a real authentic moment happening. So then we were like, okay, let's do live videos. And then we started talking about budget and how did we get there? And then I was like, okay, what's a free place I can record a live video? It was very much so practical. And I was like, my mom's office, also kind of a vibe. She's an OBGYN. So it's like a bunch, like 8 dudes in an OBGYN office wearing scrubs.
Very okay go. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, kind of just be scrappy with it. And it was hard as hell to put together because you're cramming a bunch of people in a space that's where it's not meant to, like, you're not supposed to record music there. No. You're supposed to go see your doctor. And we tried our best to make it feel real and not like make the sounds too fancy and like capture what it actually sounded like.
Yeah.
And we just got lucky as hell that it didn't sound terrible.
Wow.
Which was just a stroke of luck and that the shots worked out all right. And that's sort of this backstory behind it. But it taught me a valuable lesson of like, you don't need fancy stuff. You don't need to spend a bunch of money. Just have a good concept.
Yeah.
And from there, like the audience can fill in the gaps, like give them credit. They'll be able to like piece together that like, oh, that must have been really hard to do. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend $100,000 on a music video, basically. Yeah.
No, really. I mean, that's the vibe it gives off because you are doing it live and it's like, oh, he's hitting those notes. Oh, that person is coming in at the perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is like you're kind of watching a trapeze act. And I think that's kind of the best part of going to see live music is you can feel the energy. And so to be able to capture that on video is pretty amazing. Did you do that in a day or how many days was that?
We did that one day.
Wow.
We did one day. We were only putting out 5 songs, but I think we did 8 songs that day. Wow. Multiple takes. Problem Solver, that was like, those are one take that we did. We like choreographed it in probably 10 minutes.
Wow.
Just did like a little walkthrough. Yeah. It taught me a valuable lesson though, that like also like, I think, so I've been touring for a minute. I mean, And my setup before was like me, it was kind of like me, very stripped back me with like a drum machine and a bass player and a guitar player. But being on stage with those musicians and kind of like figuring, or being not on stage, being at my mom's office, I should say, with those musicians was like, oh, as long as like you fill out the sound and you're playing with your friends and you look like you're enjoying yourself and you're enjoying yourself, like, I don't know. There's something to be said about like the real music thing happening.
Yeah.
So I'm about to go on tour next month.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. And it's really informing how I'm thinking about this tour now.
Yeah.
Versus how I would have thought about it before.
Would that band be the same band that you would want to take on tour? Or is that possible?
I freaking wish. I mean, that would be so expensive and so not feasible. And also I'm opening for this awesome artist named Remi Wolf.
I was going to say, that's awesome. When I saw that, I was so hyped for you.
She's the best. And it's just also like, it doesn't make sense for an opener to have like 9 people on stage. So, but like I'm figuring it out right now, and I'm like, so a lot of artists use these things called tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where every artist uses it. Well, most I would say at this point, where it's like you have background stuff happening to sort of fill out the sound.
Yeah.
And initially I was like, I guess we'll do it based off of the Second Dinner album that I did. But after doing this live video and seeing it work, I was like, I'm using the stems from the live video.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. Live. There
music.
You go.
Yeah.
Live. Like you said, you're about to open for Remi Wolf and do that. One thing I thought is just so cool, knowing that you're an LA kid, you're going to play the Greek.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that? Like,
holy moly, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. You're a songwriter, you're working in the studio all the time. Like, what is that transition to all of a sudden doing those songs live? Like, is it a different approach that you have to do? Because I doubt like when you're recording, you're doing these songs all the way through, except for when you are doing it live. Like, it is that, like, what is that? And then like, what's your approach to going on tour? Like, are you thinking about your set list? Are you thinking about like what songs are going to connect with the people of the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, it's my like relationship with touring is interesting because I played guitar, and I initially kind of wanted to be a touring guitar player because I went to school for guitar and songwriting, and I was touring for a long time with my friend Sasha and working with other artists who went on tour. But Sasha was really like, did you watch Entourage?
Yeah, I
was like her turtle, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I was around, I was like in the mix, I was on the road with her, like I watched her go from a songwriter to signing a major record deal, to like going on tour all the time. And I was right there with her. So I got to watch her kind of figure out what if I play this song first and this song second, what happens? And I was just in the background on stage. So I got really comfortable on stage.
Nice.
And I got to just watch her kind of figure it out. And she did it so well. She's such an amazing performer. But through those years of watching her do that, I kind of would take little notes in my head of like, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. I want to do that. That feels like it's a little too much for me. And then once she was so nice, she let me open for her when I first started putting out music.
Oh, wow.
And I got to fuck around and find out. Yeah. Basically. And eat shit and have things work and have things not. It was really cool. And then I've been lucky enough to open for like friends that I work with. So there's this artist named Johnny that like I work with a ton, and he let me open for him. And then I opened for this guy named Glaive who I've been working with. So like I got to kind of like do these little mini stints of tour, and kind of through all that I've put together what I like, I think. Yeah. And going into this Remi thing and I'm going to do a whole headline run at the top of next year. Nice. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of like what I like doing on stage and what I don't like doing. Yeah. But to answer your general question, it's basically fuck around and find out. Is what I would say.
Do you like performing in front of people? Like, are you a natural performer?
I love performing. Yeah. I love it.
That's got to be a rush of doing that. I bet you like the Greek is just going to be crazy.
I think I'm trying not to put too much pressure on it.
I don't want to like psych you out.
No, because just because like I want it to be what it'll be, and like mind you, that night is not about me. That is about Remi selling. She sold out Remi Wolf sold out the Greek Theater. That is a huge moment for her, and I'm so happy for her. And like I'm lucky enough to be opening that show and supporting her, and like I want to make it about that more. But it's also like fucking sick. Like I'm playing the Greek.
Yeah. So now that you know, like you were saying that you with your music, it was very much about you kind of stepping out of that fear, that comfort zone, and really taking it head on. Do you still struggle with like self-doubt?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time, every day.
So I imagine like our audience and, you know, myself, like struggle with it. I think that's a very universal creative thing.
For sure.
What gets you through those moments of self-doubt?
I think it's a combination of things. I think I've been around long enough. How old are you?
32.
You're 32. Okay, I'm 28. I've been doing this creative thing long enough to kind of go through those like highs and lows and know that for the most part, I bounce back pretty good.
Yeah.
And that even when I think I'm the worst and nobody wants me and I shouldn't be doing anything, like I dig deep and I figure it out. I feel like it's like the sports metaphor maybe would be like a Michael Jordan mentality of like, you just keep putting shots up and you know that you put the work in that they'll start falling. And I'm trying to channel that, and not successfully every day, but like that's sort of my general philosophy on it. And I try to just remind myself that it's not that serious, and also like there are things that are way more important than if I had a good idea today or not.
Yeah.
Or if like I'm a good songwriter, like that. Like that's what I love doing, and I'm so passionate about that. But like I also have an amazing family and awesome friends, and like I love playing tennis, and I love, you know, I'm in a softball league. I love playing with my friends. I like being dumb. I like smoking weed. Like there's so many, I like being in the mountains. There's so many things that I love doing that have nothing to do with that. So maybe like sometimes I try to focus on the things that are going right in my life a little bit more, and let that kind of like blow over and then revisit it with a fresher mentality.
That's a great perspective, man. Especially tennis, man. What's your take on pickleball? Are you pro? Or are you against it?
I don't like the sound. I think a lot of people like they satisfying for them, the little clink. I like a classic, like whoosh, for like a tennis
so
ball.
nice.
It's so nice, yeah.
Every time I've gone and played pickleball, you're like next to tennis people, and you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, let's get better exercise. Let's just do that. Yeah,
really. All right, so just kind of like a last thing, like what would you say to, you know, an artist out there that is in that same zone that you were, where they're afraid to step out and do that? Like what's your advice to them?
Without sounding too like hyper masculine and like, don't be a bitch. Like it's not coming from that place, but it's more so coming from like, you just got to get over it. Or do something else, or stay exactly where you are. That's the conversation I had to have with myself. It's like we have like 3 options right now. I either like stay here. I was unhappy. I was writing songs I didn't like. I felt like I was undervalued. I felt like nobody gave a shit. I didn't give a shit about what I was doing. You can do that. You can start something new and quit music altogether. That's also cool. A lot of people do that, and like that's awesome, and find something where it clicks and it feels good. Or you can like kind of like figure it out and go for it. And for me, like the other 2 options sounded terrible. Both of them sounded terrible because I have 0 other skills, literally 0 other skills. Like I was like, the only way forward for me is to kind of lean in and just do the thing and face your fears. And that was so rewarding. And every day is like, no matter if I wrote a good song or not, if I had a good day, if I felt good about whatever was happening interpersonally, like I can always look back and say I did what I was afraid of, and like nobody can take that away from you. So that's probably what I would say. Just go towards the fear.
Go towards the fear. That's so good, man.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. You're
coming
awesome.
down here in DTLA and just like having this, and we're strangers. I just sent you a DM and I appreciate it, man.
Zachary, you're the man.
You're the man, dude. All right, this has been Slimdan. Please go listen to Second Dinner. Go see him on tour. And yeah, it's the end of this episode. Thanks for watching and listening. And thanks for everything else. Thanks for having me.
We know this.
Great.
Disconnected, but doing what I was called to do. In tune, tuned in, and in full pursuit. And I've seen what karma can do. So do good and let that good come back to you.